To be blunt, I have reason to believe someone is living in my house. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm being stalked, nor am I rushing to post on Reddit while hiding from an intruder. When small, daily use items started going missing, I blamed it on my own bad memory. When I would wake up at night to go to the bathroom and find all the lights on in my house, I shrugged it off. Too much to drink before bed, I would think. It had become a recurring joke in my head after the first week. The vengeful ghost lurking in my house, stealing my DVDs. Into the second week, the signs started to get a little more extreme. I noticed deep, spiderwebbing cracks in the glass frames of photos of my late wife. Do picture frames usually crack themselves without falling from the wall? I started noticing that more important, more sentimental things would be stolen, defaced, or placed in a different room. Wedding photos, old love letters, her old necklace that I couldn't bear to part with, all either missing or strewn across one of the empty rooms. Things escalated when my gun went missing 3 nights ago. At least, I didn't know it was missing until 3 nights ago. I heard some footsteps and banging around outside my bedroom. Thundering steps, like a torrent of large beasts pouring down the hallway. I scrambled to my closet for a weapon, and had no luck, due to the aforementioned missing gun. I armed myself with my pocket knife, and as I flung open the door, I heard a loud crashing, like 2 cars made of glass colliding. I leapt out into the hall, knife pointed outward as if it were a bayonet and teeth bared. But I only found the source of the racket. Every picture on the walls of the hallway had fallen to the carpeted beige floor and seemingly exploded out of pure shock. I stalked around every corner of the house in thin silence until the sun bled itself through the shutters of each window. 2 nights ago, I was awoken by a knocking on my bedroom door. I stumbled out of bed to the end of my room and hazily opened it to find no one. A small and delicate trail led off into the tempting darkness of the hallway. It shone and smeared on my fingers like blood, but it was much more darker and thicker. It was more like cooling candle wax to the touch. In my fascination, I'd forgotten the potential intruder in my home, and was wrestled back to this thought by the heat of breath on the back of my neck. Each of the hairs there rose to stand on end. The heat of the breathing created a wetness on my neck, and the sound of it slowly sunk into my ears. I whipped around as if to catch the person off guard, swinging with my right arm and quickly falling on my butt like an idiot. Whoever it was behind me, they were gone. I quickly fled to my car and slept behind the closest gas station. Last night was inexplicable in nature. Things rose to a head in ways I'm still struggling to process. I woke up to a voice. My wife's voice. I knew it couldn't possibly be her in the flesh, but in my half-awake, naive state, I didn't question it. I heard her just beyond the bedroom door, soft, with a voice full of kindness. I opened the door. Nothing. I am a fool. A harsh, crackling whisper like a death rattle of unseen origin flew down the hallway from me and settled in the quiet. The hallway shook with magnificent force, almost knocking me to one knee. The decorations scattered about the walls of the hallway rattled and fell, shattering and making sounds so piercing I'd have thought everything in the house had broken. Foolish. I walked off into the dark. Broken glass stung at my feet. I could hear faint whispers spiraling around me, but couldn't make out a word. Every minute, instinct in every cell in my body screamed at me to run, to flee the house and never return. But as estrangement forced me further onward, on the living room wall there was an arrangement of handprints smeared and tossed about, most dripping far down the wall towards the floor. They appeared to be bloody, though I couldn't be certain in the dark. A few feet away from the hand paintings was a wet, aphotic stain akin to a puddle of vomit with a consistency like viscera. It was a disgusting sight, and the very grime of the substance itself seemed to be crawling away from the mass in efforts to corrupt the rest of the room. It was then I heard a skittering behind me, the sound of long nails trailing across and down the hallway towards my bedroom, the sound of bare feet dragging along the carpet. I turned and was frozen, caught by the sight of the silhouette lurking, and unable to act. My heart caught in my throat as I watched it slowly shamble towards the window in my bedroom and reach towards the curtains. It tore open the curtains, filling the room with the obscuring deep blue glow of the night and exposing itself to me. It couldn't have been. And yet it was. It was my wife, her face sunken and features gaunt, a mess of greenish black vomit stringing from her mouth that stained her chin and much of her exposed chest. Her eyes were dim, as the dead's eyes often are. They shone in the moonlight like two moons reflecting off the blue neon of her pallid flesh. She stepped from the window and faced me, though she didn't look at me. She stared distantly and aimlessly, as if she were blind and simply aware of my direction. She lifted one stiff arm, slow and jerking in motion. She pointed directly at me, and another mass of gory black vomit spilled out of her mouth limply. The door slammed shut with a thunderous impact so violent it had rocked me from my trance. I barreled down the dark hallway and threw myself with all my strength into and through the door. Splinters of wood stabbed at me and littered the floor about me, and pain bit into my shoulder and body. Nothing. There was no one in the room, and yet the curtain of my bedroom window remained open. The acidic puddle of her vomit still gurgled, stained on the floor of the room. I had to prove it to myself. There was no logical way that my wife's reanimated corpse had appeared in my house, but before I fled for the night, I had to make sure. I had to know. A manic tremoring of anxiety hit me like a brick in my chest. I grabbed my keys and ran to the backyard, eyes darting between tree, bush, and shadow in paranoid indulgence. I unlocked the shed and swung the door open. She was just where I had left her. Her body was propped up against the wall, sitting atop an old box of clothes, her legs together and severed from the knees down. Her arms were positioned as if her hands were clasped and sitting in her lap, except that her hands too were severed. She looked back at me with her lifeless, dim eyes, and her matted hair, sticky with blood. The blood around her mouth and chin had thickened into a dark, blackening syrup that clung to her face. Nothing had changed. She was beautiful as ever. I stared in silence at her for a while, before slamming shut and locking the shed door. I quickly rushed to gather my things, and fled to avoid being confronted by the guest again. I could hardly sleep. I stared at a hotel ceiling for hours, restless. What precious little sleep I was given did little to relieve my fatigue. I didn't notice the handprint left in blood on the door of my car until I was departing to pick up my wife. I thought I was safe being somewhere far away from my house, but she found me. No, it found me, and wanted me to know it found me. I didn't have a moment to lose. I drove to the house and went straight for the backyard shed. Would you believe it if I told you the shed was empty? Well, not exactly empty. Where the body once sat, I found my pistol. It had faint fingerprint smudges and blood around the barrel. I snatched the pistol from its rest in a panic and ran to the car, then back to the hotel. I spent the last few hours questioning my sanity, questioning what I'd seen, how this could even happen. But About 10 minutes ago, I heard a knock on the hotel door. I looked through the peephole and saw an empty parking lot. A few minutes later, another knock. I looked once more, and couldn't have dreamed of seeing what lied on the outside. I saw the blue-tinged, degenerating and nude corpse of my wife standing at the end of the parking lot. It was facing away at first, staring aimlessly, but soon turned and revealed black vomit stained much of the front of her body. It felt like we had locked eyes, though there was no way she could have seen me. I ducked from the door immediately and hid. The knocking had become more and more frequent and heavy, almost primal. The black substance was rolling in pools from underneath the bottom of the hotel door. Just as I thought my death was certain, it all stopped, though the stains remained. Silence. I looked at my car, and it's covered in those black handprints. Should I risk making a run for it?